My name is Kalo Emekalo. I'm Nigerian. I'm an attorney turned software engineer. And right now I mostly do machine learning. I work for one of the big tech companies right here in the Silicon Valley in San Francisco. One of the FANG companies. I don't want to say which ones, but you can take your pick. I just want to address every single African, whether you're in the diaspora, living in Africa, whether you're Black American, whether you're Caribbean, whether you're in British. I just want to address every single person who sees Africa as the root of their home. And please just wait till the end of this video. It's going to be worth your time, I promise you. It's going to be worth your time. So, as I said, my number one identity is Nigeria, Africa. Not necessarily Abriba, which is the village that I'm from, or Igbo, which is the larger ethnic group that I belong to, or Nigeria. It is just anything from the African continent. And I'll let you know how I came to be like this. Before, growing up as a person who immigrated from Africa, from Abia State to America, my identity was only Abriba. That was the only people who I knew. The only Igbo people I knew were Abriba people. The only Igbo I spoke was Abriba people. And gradually, as I've met more and more people, my sense of identity has expanded. And the most important thing for my life right now is the development of Africa. I'll say that again. The most important thing for my life right now is the development in Africa. And I speak to a lot of different Africans, and I believe that this is also their goal. So I just want to honestly speak to all of us who all have this combined goal. Why is this not happening? Every African who I meet, they're sending a lot of money home. They're investing a lot of effort. There's been past generations of Africans who came abroad, moved back home, and nothing came out of it. There's been current generations of Nigerians who are just desperately trying to leave Nigeria. So I want us all to gather around and to figure out what is going on and how can we solve this problem. So this is going to take patience, but please just wait till the end to hear everything that I'm going to say out, okay? I want to give just a brief introduction about who I am, my path, and sort of the vision that I have. The main thing that I want to say is my entire life ideology, my entire purpose of being, my whole purpose of life is for the development of Africa. That is my master status. It is not a sports team, being American, being an engineer. My master identity, the master thing that I want to achieve when I leave this earth is the development of Africa. For me, the moral imperative thing for me to do is to develop Africa. I'm very secure in this understanding. One other thing that I want to say, I've decided that I'm going to dedicate my life towards this cause. And I have a sense of what that life is going to look like. It's going to look like waking up at 4 a.m. I'm just working till 6, until the day that I die, hopefully at a very ripe old age of 107. But I've accepted that that is the labor that I'm going to expend for this purpose. So that's just the first thing I want to get started is I'm talking to you as someone who has this goal, whose master status in life isn't retirement. It isn't make enough money so I could hang out. It isn't buying a particular type of car. It isn't having a particular type of house. It isn't building a big house in the village. My master goal for my life before I die is the development of Africa. The second thing that I want to say is that every African that I meet is immensely skilled and capable. I want to address just this one fact. I fundamentally believe, this belief is deeper than any other belief that I have. I fundamentally believe that I am infinitely capable of anything. And I believe that not because of anything special to me, but because of what is inherent in Africans. And that is where I draw my strength in. So in the same way that I believe that I am infinitely capable of doing anything and achieving anything, I'm not saying that lightly. I also believe that every other African is infinitely capable of achieving everything. So that is just, I want to get some ground principles first for this conversation. I believe very strongly in the concept of first principles, breaking something down, stripping away all assumptions you're making about why a thing can't be done, and just looking at it from the fundamental first principles and then building it up from there. So my fundamental first principle is anything that another human being is capable of, I am most likely capable of this, except for extreme outliers. But on average, most things that any human being is capable of, I am also capable of doing that thing. And I'm capable of decomposing a particular task to find out what the constituent pieces of task needed to achieve a higher goal. So, and this isn't something inherent for me. This is something I believe all human beings are capable of. So just to set that out. So given the principle that we are infinitely able of anything, the question is, why is Africa, why is Nigeria, why is Abriba in the state that it is currently in? And what can we do about that? So let me give a very brief background on how I came to have such strong beliefs in this. So I have dedicated the past 15 years of my life to this hypothesis that I am infinitely capable of anything. I just need to break down the task in which I want to achieve and then use my labor and then have strong amount of conviction and confidence and then put the earplugs in my ear so I could block out all of the noise from the outside world and just proceed with what I know to be true. So I have been practicing this and iterating over this for the past about 15 years. And this has given me such strong conviction that so many things are possible. My goal right now is to scale out that conviction that I have and scale out some of the processes that I found to be able to achieve a large goal by breaking it down into smaller pieces. So first and foremost, I have not come to this understanding by just casual. I've come to this understanding by structured studying of particular tasks that I want to get done. So for instance, I have studied in particular setting goals and goal achievable. This was one of my first tasks. And I want us all to pick a goal right now, because the number one thing that determines what you are able to achieve is what your initial goal is in the first place. And this seems subtle, but I want every person watching this video to truly understand what that meaning is. If you have a set of participants and you put one participant in a control group and you want to see who can get the highest score on the SAT, and maybe you have one control group and several experimental groups. And for each of these experimental groups, you say, okay, maybe this group, they'll have a nutritious breakfast. Maybe this group, they'll sleep more. Maybe you could just figure out what are the variables. Maybe this group will have a tutor. And you're trying to figure out what are the variables that are most likely to increase their SAT score. It turns out that one very robust variable is just what the initial goal is. If a child's initial goal is to get a perfect score, that will mediate. That will have a stronger causative effect on their end score. It's just what their initial goal was in the first place. So if someone sets out to get a 1600 on the SAT is a college entrance exam for the US, then that is going to be the most determinative factor of what their end score is. versus someone who set out to get a 1200. So this is a very subtle thing, but I want everyone to be very familiar with this idea. I'll break it down in something that's just easier to understand. Reach for the stars, land on the clouds. The biggest mediator of your end result is what your initial goal is in the first place. For me, in my personal life, I grew up in a place where most people didn't go to college. Where I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, the high school that I originally went to, most of my friends, I would say that if you looked at statistics to say how many people from this high school ended up in college a year after graduation, it will probably be less than 10%. In this environment, you never meet anyone with a professional job. So you have no ability to think of what the possibilities are for careers. So you're limited by your initial imagination. And for me, since none of my friends were going to college, going to any college was doing it. So I thought going to any college was good. Not going to the number one college, going to any college was good. So if you're asking what mediated my result of college, which college did I end up, if you had to rank top 50 and you looked at many other Nigerians who were going to college and you said, which one went to the best university? It's the person whose initial goal was to go to the best university. My goal was go to a university. And thus I went to a university, Texas Tech University, UT Dallas at first and then Texas Tech University. Later on in law school, the same thing. I thought just going to a law school was doing it. Really, I should have said, go to Harvard. And when I was in Texas Tech, I realized this isn't for me. I should have achieved for way higher, yet I'm here. You know what? Let me hurry up and graduate quickly and get out of here. I don't belong here. I belong for something way higher. I just would have never known because no one from where I'm from has even made it here. So I had no way of knowing that the people here at Texas Tech are just gonna be drunkards, peeing themselves in the pants from playing beer pong and getting drink. After I realized that, I realized this should not have been where I should have been competing. I should have been competing at a much higher level. So my initial goal was going to any university. The goal that I should have had been going to Harvard. If I had that as my set goal, I may have not gotten into Harvard, but the university I would have got to would have been a lot better than Texas Tech. Next, going to Santa Clara. Santa Clara was a okay law school, pretty good law school. And I set my goal for Santa Clara and I got Santa Clara. It wasn't until after I was at Santa Clara that I realized I should have set my goal for Harvard. But until then, I had never met someone besides my sister who went to an Ivy League. So I had no conception that this was a possible goal. I made this mistake several times in my life until I read literature that was able to articulate what I was doing. I was choosing the most, in my mind, perceivably achievable goal. And then choosing the next perceivably achievable goal. Okay, first college. Okay, now law school. Okay, maybe I should have gone to a better law school. When really I should have said Harvard. I should have started from here. So after I read literature and understood very immensely this, I decided to change and say, let me pick the top goal possible and achieve for that. That way I know if I fail this top goal, I'll land in something great, something a little bit less, as opposed to choosing here and being very disappointed that this is what I chose to be. So from that point on, I chose whatever can make us the most money, with the idea that if I make money, I will be able to use that money to help Nigeria. So I'm kind of rambling, but I really want to get a sense of everybody that the number one thing you can do, the evidence-based thing you can do, the number one mediator of what you first achieve is what your initial goal is. So I want everyone to gather with me right now. My goal for Africa is to be the wealthiest, most industrial, safest combination of foreign states that anybody has ever seen. I want Africa from the East Coast to the West Coast to be the wealthiest, most successful collection of independent states, United States, that anybody has ever seen. And that should be our guiding purpose. Nothing less. It shouldn't be to do this. No, we should start from here. So that's the first thing I want to say. We should start from the very, 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 very top. Another thing that I want to say, we need to have a certain conviction about what is able to get done. And we need to be able to make reality bend to our will. We need to have a conviction that reality bends to our will. We need to walk around this earth with a conviction that based of our labor, anything is possible. And because we know we can wake up at 4 a.m. and labor until 10 p.m. and we have 100% conviction that anything is possible and that the locus of control is within us in our labor. And we need to promote that attitude out towards the world. Shyness has no place in achieving particular goals. Timidness has no place in achieving particular goals. We need to have a self-assuredness about our actions and our ability to bend the universe towards our will. And we can do that by having a first principles basis. So for my life, my personal life, I have felt that I am infinitely capable of anything. And I've been confused at the world whenever my belief butts against the world thinking that that isn't possible. But I've understood why people think that, because statistically those people are correct. If I say that I want to go to college, coming from the neighborhood that I'm from, statistically most people from the neighborhood that I'm from have never gone to college. Thus, the world looked at me very differently when I was coming from that neighborhood. Yet, the statistics did not confuse me of what I knew to be possible, which is what keeps you from going to college is taking the SAT. And anyone can take the SAT. So regardless of statistics, I have a conviction that when I go out to the world and I meet a college counselor and I tell them, hey, I'm gonna graduate in 2.5 years. I'm gonna graduate in 3 years. I'm gonna take this major. They're looking at me with suspicion because they haven't seen people of my skin color do this before. But I will look at them with a sternness that I am gonna bend reality to my will. And the college counselor's view of what they believe is possible, whether rational, it's rational for them to believe that. They haven't seen people like me do this. Whether or not focusing on some immutable characteristic, such as my skin color, is an intelligent thing to make decisions off of, or whether or not they were doing that we can leave that to the side. But the most important thing is I have a fundamental awareness of first principles and what is capable. So if I meet a college counselor who has some doubt about my capabilities, that doesn't even enter my brain. And that is a militant attitude that we all need to possess. I want us to have an attitude that anything is possible and we can break anything down into labor units. And this is really the very beginning of a fundamental culture shift that I want all Africans to participate in. Because I believe that anyone who does this will succeed. Anyone who does this will succeed. So, when I was in college, I graduated college at the age of 20. I went straight to law school. In law school as well, too, I graduated early. I took the bar exam early. People were saying it wasn't possible, but for me, it's very evident that if you just take these classes, take these credits, that's the requirement for graduation. And it's also possible that if you study just nonstop, you're gonna pass the bar exam. So I did all those things and I graduated early and I passed the bar exam early. And before I even walked the stage, I was a graduate, probably the youngest attorney in the entire state of California. From where I'm from, this is very unlikely. It is exceedingly unlikely. But I had a conviction, not in myself, I mean, yes, in myself, but more in what is possible. And I knew that anyone who studies will get this result. So I studied and I got that result. Thereon after, I realized that I had made a mistake by going to this school. I should have gone to Harvard. And I realized that I'm doing this thing where I'm starting from the bottom. And I was like, no, let me reorient my life and pick the highest possible goal that I can get. And at that point, it was either go back to school and go to Harvard or figure out some way I can make the most amount of money. And for me, that was software engineering. It was very obvious at that point that software engineers, it was at that point that software engineers were selling companies for billions. No point in history has a team of 10 been able to generate $1 billion in capital in 5 years. Instagram was selling, WhatsApp was selling, so many companies were being sold. So for me, it was very clear, if I wanted to maximize my earning, I would have to switch to software engineer. Again, when I was making that switch, I've never studied math, never studied computer science. But I knew that anything that anyone could do, I can also do better. And I knew that my conviction was in making Nigeria and Africa wealthy. And someone else's conviction was buying a yacht or a boat. And I knew that my conviction would beat out over their conviction. So when I was studying for computer science, when I was self-studying for all of this, I had a conviction. And I met many forces in this universe that tried to shake that conviction. So let me bring this back to Africa. We know that capital is just economic activity. If I'm able to move to Nigeria and create a fence of one house and say this one house is a town called Kalo Town, and I know I can earn a certain amount of money from US clients, then Kalo Town now has a GDP, say I'm able to earn $300,000 a year. Kalo Town now has a GDP per capita of $300,000, the wealthiest country in the world. That's first principles thinking. That is the way to be the wealthiest. But it's just a small geographic area. I know in that small geographic area, I could also get other people and teach them the exact same thing that I learned to be able to make an immense amount of income. And so I could add one more person, and now we have 2 people. And maybe they can't earn 300, but they earn 150. That still is, if we said that this thing was a town, that would be the wealthiest town. And we could add one more person. Maybe I need someone to help fix generators. So we add one person, they make only $30,000 a year. Or let's say 10,000. But still, even with this decrease in income, pulling down the previous average, it is still a very wealthy country. If we said Kalo Town was its own small little country. I know that this is capable. So my question is, why is Africa, why is Nigeria, why is Abraba in the state that it's in? It is in the state that it's in because people like me, people like you, aren't moving there and establishing your one little. If every single person who is in the Bay Area all moved to Nigeria and we had our own little town, that town would be the wealthiest town in the world. And we know, I personally know that my machine learning skills, my software engineer skills, I know that can forever make money. I fundamentally know this. I'll make a whole separate video about this. So my question is, and the reason I got there is I realized that exploitation is the only way to make money. I read that somewhere, I'm not gonna tell you where, but exploitation is the only way to make money. Every country that is wealthy was wealthy by exploiting labor. So the person whose labor I have the most control of is my own labor. So I exploited my labor from 4 a.m. till 6 p.m. every day for 15, 20 years. And through doing that, I was able to build an immense amount of skills and use those skills to trade on the free market. Why is it that we have so many talented people, so many wealthy Nigerians, but they're doing things on the behalf of other countries? Because they all make the same calculus that I do. And they've seen other generations of Nigerians leave their high-paying job, which I do not recommend you do, leave their high-paying job, go to Nigeria, and then lose everything. So I want to be very strategic in the way that we do this. Any second that I spend having this conversation is second that I can't spend working in my job and increasing my salary to take that money and invest directly into Nigeria. But I genuinely believe that this message is that important. I believe that this philosophy that I've been able to scale out my particular income from the lowest socioeconomic class in American society to the highest socioeconomic class in American society. I want to scale that out now. And I believe we can do that same thing for all of Africa. So my purpose in life is to get enough money to where I know I will forever make money. If I leave right now and leave my income, that is a loss of $5 million over 10 years. Probably way more than that. That's assuming that my income stays static. And so whatever I do needs to generate $5 to $10 million over the next 10 years. And I've seen many people leave their job on that bet that they can do something better for the African, and that bet has not worked out for them. And I understand most of what Nigerians need is capital. So this is what I'm thinking. What made me wealthy was exploiting my labor and waking up at 4 a.m. and studying. The second I have money, the second I have time, ability, money, the second I'm able to get to a spot of where I want to be, the second I can have $1 million saved, I'm going to go to Nigeria and create a compound where anyone who wants to be like me and wants to exploit their labor, knowing that 2 years of doing this will give them everything that they ever want in life, will have that opportunity. We will be learning mathematics, neural networks, programming, and we will create the most amount of wealth that this world has ever seen, because we will do it with an aggression, a conviction, and we will wake up at 4 a.m. every morning and get to work. That is the only thing we should be doing. Not making motivational appeals, I don't want to say too much. The only thing we should be doing is working, laboring with an intensity that makes people think that you are crazy. And that intensity will give us our goal. So if you're watching this and you think this is too much, this is what we need to make Africa wealthy. This is what we need to get out of this malaise that we've been stuck in for how many hundreds of years. So my number one goal right now, my number one purpose in life is to work, 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 and make the most amount of money possible. Take that money and put it in Africa and get students who are going to be from 4 a.m., from 6 p.m., working as if the future of Africa depended on it. If you were in the diaspora, this should be your master orientation. If you were in the diaspora, getting money, not getting the maximum amount of money, taking that money and building a compound where you have students from 4 a.m. till 6 p.m. exploiting their labor to create capital that we can use to build plumbing, to buy vaccines, to build housing, to get electricity. This is what we need. We need to get capital, and we don't have capital. So if you don't have capital and you want capital, use your labor. So I want to organize. The second I figure out how to be able to earn the same amount of money that I'm currently earning in my job, and then take that large sum of money and invest in Nigeria with the conviction that anyone who has a radical orientation towards the improvement of Africa will succeed. Let's get started.